Surprise! Season 2 of the Dichotomy Diaries is officially here. And today, we're starting with something crucial, getting to know Ashley. Before we dive into the twists and turns and jaw-dropping moments of her story, this episode is about her background, her voice, her perspective. Because understanding who Ashley is and why she made the choices she did is literally everything. But first, I have some exciting news. The full video episodes of the Dichotomy Diaries from now on will only be available on our Patreon. It's free to join, and there are a lot of things that come with the free membership that you ain't never seen before. Now, if you pay for the membership fee, it's gonna blow your head off. Let's just say that. Season 1, Season 2, all of it. So if you want all of the extra behind the scenes, additional visual timelines, never heard before episodes, bonus episodes, and the unedited full video episodes where you get to see every reaction, every expression, every fuck up, and every moment exactly as it unfolds, make sure that you join us there. There will be a link in this episode description. Now, if you've been here since Season 1, you already know this podcast has grown entirely from word of mouth. And because of you, the Dichotomy Diaries is officially in the top 1.5% of podcasts globally. So keep doing what you're doing. Hit that follow button, leave a review, share this episode with your friends, because it truly makes all the difference. Now, let's get into it. Ashley's story starts here. I'm your host, Amanda Arnier, and this is the Dichotomy Diaries. Hi.
Hello.
How are you? How are you feeling today?
I woke up today. I was nervous, like leading up to it, but I'm excited.
I was nervous too, which is weird. I felt like I haven't been on mic or camera in forever. And I was like, have this weird like butterflies in my stomach feeling.
But good nervous.
It's always a good nervous because I know like how it's going to be after we're done. But still I'm like, ooh, I'm going to fumble everything. So if you're feeling that way, like same. I think it's important to let the listeners know how we even know each other. Because I know that people can submit their stories. Like, this wasn't one of those things where we didn't know each other beforehand.
Right.
So, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So, I am really into representing all types of bodies. So, first and foremost, I'm a photographer. Mm-hmm. I'm a boudoir photographer, and I love to photograph all ethnicities, all bodies, shapes, sizes, everything, and try to put out there like the non-marginalized bodies that are not represented in society. So I posted on Facebook, I was like, I need to photograph men because though they are not represented in the boudoir community. So I was looking for like the dad bod, muscular, every type of body. So I had 5 men, I think, in a couple days that I shot, and one of them was Dick.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's so crazy because that was probably like a year ago.
No, it had to have been because I was in the Dole Mansion.
So it was like summertime of last year, though.
I don't even think, no, it was farther back because I have moved twice now in my studio.
Oh. I'm trying. I was living with him at my dad's house, and that was after, it was like April, May, in June he was gone for good. So it had to have been within those 3 months.
Yeah, I believe it was probably like March-ish.
And that was so interesting because I remember, obviously, he wasn't connected with you on Facebook. I was, and I was like at that time, like grasping for straws, right? At how to keep him around. So stupid. And I was like, he does this online content where he needs to be naked all the time. she needs, a hot model. Okay. And so I'm like, hey, like,
let's do this.
Let's do this. And I'm not going to lie, he was actually pissed about it. He's like, I don't want to do a shoot. And I'm like, you don't even have money to do, like, you need to do it. I thought it would be nice, but that's how kind of everything was with us. And I remember going there with you, and I had never been there before, and I've always wanted to do a boudoir with you. And I was like, this is exciting. However, it's not about me right now, Do you remember how, like, shitty his attitude was, too?
I remember, and after listening to season 1, I was even thinking to myself, at what part did I see both of you and you were in the middle of this shit show?
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about Vegas all the time, and I was asking you a couple of questions about that, but I remember just his voice.
Yeah, that's what everybody says, right? All the time. They're always like, how did you deal with it? How did you not know that he just really liked men, Amanda? I'm like, because I don't know. I never noticed the voice being like, because, like, is it a lisp? I don't know. It's not a lisp. It's just like a really weird, like, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not masculine whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it would definitely, if I went on a first date with him, it would give me the ick. Like,
oh God.
And I don't care how in shape, muscular, nice your face is. It's just, he didn't have a personality either. So
yeah, that's actually the most true. One of those things that hindsight is always 2020. Looking back, I'm like, your personality was this fake facade, which I think is so common in like these experiences that we have.
Yeah,
it's, you get this like piece of paper where it's like, this is them. They're perfect. Oh my God, they check all the boxes. And they're literally none of those things, actually quite the opposite of most of them. So
yeah, when I first met you both, you were a very attractive couple together. It's just, I was like, when he left, I was like, ugh. Yeah.
I actually loved the pictures that you took of him. I thought that they were great. He would say that was like the fattest he's ever been in his life, and I'm just like, you could see 8 abs, like. And I remember you posting them, and everyone's like, oh God damn, who's this guy? Blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, he's mine, that's mine, blah blah blah. Now looking back again, so stupid and just desperate of me, but always trying to do things and make it known to him, not anybody else.
Yeah,
they're like, you know what you did to me, and I'm still here, like, publicly, like, claiming you, right?
Yeah,
and just like cheering you on and all of that stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how we met. But also at the same time, you have shot so many people that I know from Huntley, whether it was family shoots. Have you done baby shoots?
I mean, naturally, you start off as a hobbyist or a momtographer,
right,
whatever you want to call. I've been doing it for 15 years. Ish.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a long time. When I had my oldest, I'm taking pictures of him. I really enjoy the editing process, and every part of what I do, from shooting, editing, and giving the pictures, I love.
Yeah.
Like, some people hate editing. I like editing.
Yeah.
So, I've just been doing it for a very, very long time, and I started with newborns. Then I went into families. I did weddings, and I was really good at it. I'm good at chaos and things happening really quickly, and making, if it rains, let's figure it out kind of thing. But it's just, I was tired shooting a wedding and dealing with the after wedding hangover, I guess you could say. My body was, I was missing all the sports for my kids. And so when I went and got a studio at the Dole Mansion, I looked at it and I said, nobody shooting boudoir in here is crazy, because it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful, and like every single corner of every room, every nook has its like own feel. And I know you're like me, like I really like the vintagey kind of imperfect scenes, right?
Yeah.
Because then it really highlights the person.
Yep.
And I always felt that with all of your photos, even if they were outdoors too. I feel like you've done a really good job with that. But I just remember I would always see, I think it was my best friend's sister, like, initially did a bridal magazine shoot with you back in the day.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, I love the way she photographs. And then more and more people that I knew started, like, I went to see Ashley Clem, and I'm like, oh, I got to get over there. So yeah, I'm really glad that we met. Sorry you had to experience Dick, but
it tied it together.
Yeah, like now, you got to. He wasn't being a dick then, but he rarely was ever being a dick to other people
like
or
in public,
me in public. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah. So, well, just to explain, with the Dole Mansion, it's an arts park, so all the suites and studios had different types of artists in there. So I was there for about 10 years, and it's kind of funny. I always say I photographed so many people in both counties that I say that I've seen almost everybody in Kane and McHenry County half naked at some point, just because I photographed so many women. And I'm just joking with that part, but I take it very seriously. I absolutely love my job. And eventually I got busy enough to where I could give up weddings and families, and I just strictly focused on boudoir. So
that's amazing. I think that, boudoir is one of those things that people do as a gift, right, to their person. But I've seen more and more people have been doing it just for themselves.
Yeah.
And I did that a few times when I lived in Arizona. And I remember getting the photos back and being like, I really wish I had someone to give this to. But at the same time, it made me feel so good. Yeah. The experience was always a little bit, I don't know, like harrowing at the beginning. And then you just like get into this groove, and I think you do a really good job of like getting your subject into this comfortable space where you can kind of like, I've been there right at some of your shoots where it's like at the beginning they're like stiff, and then at the end it's like, okay, no, let's take it all off. And I think that that's awesome because it really like gets into the psyche of that person. Like, I am pretty, no matter what I look like, no matter what this man at home is telling me or whatever it is, like it's for them. And you being a way for someone to go from this version of themselves to that version of themselves, like that's amazing as a human.
And I've heard so many stories that were similar to yours, and also what we're about to unfold, that, it is phototherapy, and it probably does more for your psyche than sometimes going to a therapist.
Totally, yeah.
When I'm shooting my clients, they always say that you are 4 times more attractive than you actually think that you are. And I'm shooting you through my eyes, so I'm looking at you like how everyone else sees you.
Right.
Beautiful. Not picking you apart like you're going to do to yourself.
Yeah.
So then when they see the pictures, it's way more meaningful. They're like, that's me. I'm like, yeah, that's you.
Yeah, like those reveal moments. I know that you've been putting on social media sometimes when you do the reveals, and it just the reaction, right?
Yeah. They're like, that's me. Like,
yeah, that's just so amazing. I love that. And hey, it's so nice that we live close by too, with me being in Huntley, you being just right down the street. It's been really nice getting to know you and listening to your story. And, I think that I'm not a therapist, you're not a therapist, but it is therapeutic for us to share our experiences together.
Yeah.
And when you had initially came to me about wanting to collaborate and, finally get this story out there, like there was a little bit of hesitation from you because how could there not be? But also the legality of things and, okay, I want to tell, but I feel like I can't and I'm going to get in trouble, right? Like, I'm so glad that you came to me and talked to me about it because I had been through going the whole season 1 of sharing 100% factual information that I think you understand now that it's like, I could talk. Like anybody can talk about their experience, and it's not defamatory if we're telling the truth.
The difference, I think, between your story and mine, which is really relatable, is that I have children involved, and you could essentially not see Dick ever again or hear from him ever again.
Yeah.
And I have to see these individuals over and over and over again. Yep. I cannot get rid of them. They will never go away. So the abuse doesn't end there ever. And then also having children, they love their parent and they want to see the best version of them.
Always, yeah.
And that's really what my hang up was, is that I'm like, I don't want to bring it into light, but I know that it's never going to stop.
Yeah.
And maybe it will, hopefully, but we don't know. And if it doesn't, which I'm fully expecting it not to, it might even get worse from this point. But I'm not going to be quiet. There's almost every type of abuse between your story and my story.
Yeah.
And people need to talk about it because you can't do that to people. So.
I will say that majority of my listeners who have voiced, you know, whether it's a thank you for sharing, Amanda, or hey, I'd like to share eventually, but I'm not ready. Anybody who has given me even the smallest bit of their experience, I would say 90% of them are single moms. And while I can sympathize, right, I cannot empathize because I don't have children. And it was for me also maybe a little bit nerve-wracking because I feel obviously a very big sense of responsibility to you as the person telling the story, and then you add in the kids and I'm like, okay, now I'm like, I have to protect those children too. So I want you to know that everything that we put out and that we talk about, right, like we've crafted it in a way where we're doing this with your children in mind at the forefront of it all. And also with the viewer in mind who's going through the same thing as you.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be what resonates the most with the listener base, with both of our listener base. So
yeah, and what's crazy is that, again, I photograph women, but I also listen to their story, and a lot of times they are scared or they've gone through things that are way worse than what we're going to talk about. And there was almost a point where I even talked to you, and it's that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I'm like, my story isn't that horrible. However, when you dissect it, I'm also, downplaying it as well.
Self-gaslighting. I did that almost every single day before the podcast because I was like, no one's going to want to listen to it. But then also, after I would release every episode, I would be like, well, that was probably the best that it's going to be. The best. And I say that the best, but it's like the worst that's going to get. Was it really that bad? Why am I talking about this? Then everybody should be talking about it. But yes, everybody should be talking about it because, you just said maybe it won't stop. Maybe it's going to get worse. The power and the change comes from the numbers of people willing to share and collectively putting that out there so that it becomes actual hard facts, data, evidence.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't do something about it or our situations are not going to change or, whatever, get better. But someone's going to be like, oh, shit, the Dichotomy Diaries has had 19 seasons and, 12 of them are single mothers who've experienced this kind of abuse. Take all of that, lobby it. That's my hope, right?
This season, we're also going to talk about abuse that men go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're hitting everything.
We are.
And I guess what I am worried about at the end of this is that things, again, are not going to get better. They are going to get worse. And I am not an angel in this story. And when I spoke to you, I said, I want to make sure that I air out my dirty laundry and I'm as honest with myself because then I'm looking at it open-minded and I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be the perfect mother. I'm not going to be the perfect wife, girlfriend. I'm not going to be the perfect friend, but I'm being self-aware and I'm finally ready to say the demons that I've done to other people. And
some people never get to that point in their life, and I will say that healing out loud and being so vulnerable to where you are having 10,000 people download your episode where you talk about how you did Molly with your husband and just like all the shit that I talked about in mine. I was nervous. I was so nervous to put that out there, but I will say that is the stuff that people are like, thank you, I feel seen now. Because I don't even want to tell my family, because if I tell my family, they're going to judge me. Well, shame has literally no place here. And I am just excited for this process, because even the planning process, I've seen like an evolution of you and like owning all of your story. I don't like to call like victims because I think it has negative connotation. But do you remember what I said to you about like if you identify as a victim, then it immediately makes the other person who hurt you a predator. And once you look at someone who you loved or who you respected at one point or put on a pedestal as a predator, it kind of like cuts it off.
Yeah.
And I think that is just so true. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're here, and I want to make sure that everybody gets to know a well-rounded version of who you are. So we're going to start with kind of just like, I don't know, like a Who is Ashley Clem 101, kind of setting the stage for what we're going to get into. Can you tell us like a little bit about your early life? Like, are you originally from this area? You know, how did you grow up, and what was your childhood like?
So my mother came from Poland, and she joined the army, and right away, I believe she was 20. She met my father, and he was also in the army, and my mother is very, you know, like the average Polish woman, beautiful eyes, long legs. I mean, she's a dime piece, but she's that like stern Polish look, like the resting bitch face.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, he is very charismatic, kind of like a Matthew McConaughey kind of thing, which that'll play into someone later on in the podcast. But he was a womanizer. He in total was married 6 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
He could never be alone. Mm-hmm. And my mother was his 3rd marriage. Mm-hmm. And he had a son with his first wife, a daughter with his second wife, and then I was the 3rd child. So he got himself fixed after that because clearly things were starting to be a pattern. But I have a half brother and a half sister who both live in Texas right now.
Okay.
And we are each 5 years apart. So my brother's 10 years older than me. My sister is 5 years older than me, and then I'm the black sheep baby. So they met, and there was a ton of alcoholism there. Mm-hmm. And we lived in Alabama at that point, and I remember just like throwing things and yelling, not me, but my father, and my mom just had to get out.
Okay.
So I just remember her picking up one day and taking me to Chicago, because Chicago is a very large Polish-based.
Totally.
And so at that point, my grandmother flew from Poland. She came to stay with my mother. And for the longest time, it was just the 3 of us. I learned to speak Polish because that's the only way she would communicate, my grandmother. And, you know, it was just us. She was a single mother.
And I think you were in the same area of Chicago, like where my family's from, right?
I was in Hanover Park.
Okay.
Or it was River Grove, then Hanover Park. And then, you know, I really wanted my mom to start dating.
Yeah.
I want to say maybe 11 or 12. And this is probably the worst thing she could have ever done, but she latched on to security and what she thought was going to help grow the family and be stable. And so she met this guy. His name is Jordan. His name was Jordan. And at first, I mean, he was very, very smart. Definitely not a looker, a book nerd kind of vibe to him. He actually had a voice kind of like Dick.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Like at first I thought he was maybe, you know, into the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I was like, he just didn't have many masculine characteristics at all. And so he did have some money, and so they went and bought a house in Algonquin.
Okay.
And it was made, you know, from the foundation up. So we have been the only owners with that house. And so I was a freshman in high school. We moved to Algonquin, and things just got really, obviously I was a teenager, so I wanted nothing to do, with my parents at that point. And my father lived in Texas, and so I would go and visit him every couple, maybe like 3-4 times a year. I would fly by myself. I thought I put him on a pedestal. He was, my dad, and he called me once a week. Still, even, with his alcoholism and stuff, like he was then on his 5th or 6th wife at that point. And, I would go and visit my siblings, and coming back to Jordan it is pretty bizarre, but he was probably the biggest slob. It got really, really, really bad. He had a gambling problem, would waste a ton of money. He would start drinking and eating, and he had gained a ton of weight. And just was always on medication, always going to the doctor, always thought something was wrong with him. It would get to the point where he would self-medicate so hard that he would pass out on the couch, have food just chilling at like ketchup, and just, he was so gross.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, like, why are you with him? She didn't love him,
right.
Definitely did not. But it was almost to the point where if she left him, he would have died, kind of thing.
Right, so she felt
almost
like this
enabling.
like inherent responsibility, almost not just for him but for his life, right? Yeah. I can see a scenario where it's like, yeah, but he's sick and I need to help him, as opposed to like he's making these conscious choices, which makes her then kind of like a live-in slave a little bit.
Yeah, to really dig in on how disgusting this man was. There was one time he defecated.
Defecated.
I'm trying to be.
No. You don't have to
shit all over him. No. He shit himself, and he was so drunk he fell on the floor, and then he was trying to get up, and just shit was smearing like everywhere.
That happens with my dog. Yeah, that's
and
unfortunate.
my grandmother, who lived with us at the time, didn't want my mom to see it, so my grandmother would clean up a grown man's shit.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Another example was he had an office upstairs, and
was he actively working?
He was on disability at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of follows suit with that type of person.
Yeah. And he would be up in his office. He would jerk off.
Ugh.
And he would leave the cum on the floor.
Jesus.
So
in this house, you're living there, your grandma's living there, your mom's living there.
I mean, the door was always closed. Like, we wouldn't go in there or anything. But and I'll get into this later, but when he passed away, like, his carpet was rock hard.
Oh my God.
That's how gross.
That's repulsive.
Yeah. So when
your
I
poor
say
mother, your poor girl, poor you, like.
And so to me telling the story, I almost forget like how disgusting it was.
Yeah.
Because it was just not normal. But
well, when you're dealing with it, and like everybody has their own shit going on, right? Pun intended. Like, you're not going to take care of that. Like, some people you're like, I can't change them, and so you just don't, and you kind of are just like whatever, and you just do your own thing, stay in your own lane. Imagine like your mom, your grandma, all doing that, but like this person is there and existing.
Well, so I was a teenager during this time, and I remember just always getting into fights with him, being like, "You're disgusting. I don't know why. Mom, why don't you leave him?" And I just kind of went off on my own. At that point, and they lived a very miserable life together, and I don't want to bounce back and forth with timelines, but he ended up getting a DUI, and a week later, my mother found him dead on the floor. So, you know, there was definitely suicide there.
Yeah.
And he always would talk about how he would know exactly how much to drink and exactly what to take. And I remember getting a phone call, and I didn't live there anymore. And I got a phone call, and they're like, you know, Jordan is dead. And I sat there and I said, well, is my mother okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, she's fine. I said, all right, good. Like,
Yeah.
this is good.
Like, okay, finally free, which is, you know, I mean, it's not even really sad. I mean, this person putting your mom through so much and her, you know, not really being able to do anything about it because, you know, trauma bond, it's what it is, right? I can imagine she probably felt a gigantic weight lifted.
Oh, yeah. There was no tears. I just needed to make sure she was okay. And of course she was. Mm-hmm. She was relieved.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where he was so selfish, like with the money and everything, that he knew that if he committed suicide, he wouldn't get any benefits to my mom.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like life insurance, right? Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Well, you come from a long line of strong women.
Yes.
But I can imagine that seeing your mom go through this type of relationship, and even with your own father, right, that there's probably some trauma there and learned associations with how you've dealt with things in your relationships, which, you know, it's unfortunate. I've met your mother. I think that she's wonderful. She's like, I've heard all about you. I think she's fantastic, and I'm sure your grandma was too, but I think there is resilience in our genetics. Even before we experience the things, because our parents try and hide things from us, we kind of like come out the womb like, no, we're ready to go, kind of. I believe that. So, okay, so that is traumatic. Your early childhood is kind of traumatic.
And I don't look at it, you know, like that. You know, my mother always worked till like 7 o'clock at night, and I pretty much took care of myself. I remember, you know, getting home from school, and my grandmother would be home, but again, she didn't speak English. She wasn't checking up on me, and I would be riding my bike until it got dark out on railroad tracks. Like the helicopter parenting we do now is nothing compared to the way we grew up as kids, having no cell phones and always being outside. Yeah. You know, there's a ton of independence to the point where it's like I knew how to cook and microwave things, and my teenager now doesn't know how to do any of that because I enable him and I do everything for him. And, you know, there is a level of independence for sure that I have and drive that I have, which, you know, we'll get into, and it got me where I am today and who I am today. But it's just my mom has been through a ton, and I don't look at it as being traumatic, even though, like you said, you're listening to me and you're like, holy shit.
Right. I think that there's a part of that too, though. I listen to it and I'm like, holy shit, that's a lot. Knowing how I grew up and my childhood, and me also having to do a lot of like the stuff for myself and learning things. But like you said, like that's not how kids grow up these days. And I mean, through therapy and all of this stuff, healing my inner child and all of it, it's like, I think people our age who have had that childhood experience overcorrected so much.
Yeah, maybe.
That we're like, I'm not going to be anything like my mom. And then it's like, you try not to be like your mom.
But then
in all of the ways that you know how, which is like, I don't want my kid to ever have to feel like they have to do their own laundry or do the dishes or not show up at home and there's no meals. But we kind of still embody them in different ways that we're unsure of how to correct on our own. Yeah. You know? But yeah, I mean, that's again like your self-gaslighting, being like, I don't think it was that traumatic. We have a tendency to like think about the good parts because our whole life we probably had to be in a situation where like, are you happy? Yeah, I'm happy. My dad leaves every night, and I don't know if he's going to come back, but then he does, and I'm happy. You know, it's like that kind of thing. So
I was very loved at home. Like, she always hug and kiss me, you know, never would go on yelling rants or anything like that. So for that, I'm very, very thankful. You know, again, my dad would call once a week, and I know my siblings have gone through a lot with my dad on the alcoholic part, but since I lived in a different state, they sheltered me from that.
yeah.
And like towards the end, my brother and sister like didn't even talk to my dad anymore.
Yeah.
I was the only one that still talked to him, so he would call and, you know, I would answer and he would say, "You're the only one who will talk to me," kind of thing. So, you know, I am an only child, kind of, like with my mother, but then I'm also the baby of the family. So there's a different dynamics there too. So
do you still communicate with these siblings?
yeah, I love them. We're really, really close. I wish I lived in Texas.
Yeah.
Christmases would be way better.
Yeah.
We would be grilling, doing family stuff, because my family here is so small.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really regret, I guess. You know, with my mom being a single mom, we have no family. It's just us.
Gotcha.
So everything else, it's on my dad's side, because my mom's family lives in Poland. And I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's interesting. You should do some genealogy, find those extended cousins and all of that kind of stuff.
I mean, well, I did do the DNA thing, and I'm purebred European. It was just one circle over Poland and one over Germany, because my dad lived in Germany. He was born there. And I have like no % of anything else.
That's awesome.
I kind of want it to be a little bit of something else.
You want it to be a little bit more skewed, yeah. Well, you know what you are.
Yeah, I'm pedigree right there.
Yeah, there you go. AKC, right?
Yep.
So talk about like friendships during childhood and adolescence. So, you know, you had a lot going on in the home, and you said, you know, you were outside a lot. Like, I mean, I was too back in the day, and I had a lot of friends. So what was that like for you? I
am social as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot be alone. I don't like being alone. I have to always be around somebody. Like, I could not go to the movies, even now, by myself. I don't want to travel by myself. I always need somebody with me. And to this day, you can tell just by looking at my socials that I am always, like, surrounded by people.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way you look at it, like, I don't have a big family, but my friends are my family.
Yeah.
And, I mean, now I have so many strong relationships with my friends. Some are from high school, some are not. But, you know, I felt like I was somewhat popular, but also I wasn't preppy at all. And I always hung out with the older crowd. So let's say freshman year, I was always with juniors or seniors. I was more on the party side. I definitely drank a lot and never got into drugs or smoked weed or anything like that. It just would make me paranoid. So I was just, you know, out at parties, you know, drinking. And yeah, I had...
And this is when you were living in Algonquin, right?
Yes.
Well, this is, I mean, there's people who don't know this area. So, like, there's nothing to do between, like, Huntley and Algonquin. And I mean, we were rivals in high school. And we would have, like, keg parties and bonfires, and we would sneak into the quarry, and you know, like, they don't just do that stuff in the South, like, that's here too. And even though now it's like, well, it's so much more built up though here than it ever was before. I mean, I'm like looking at Huntley and I'm like, what the fuck, this place is an actual city. I'm like, I had, you know, 300 people in my graduating class. Doesn't seem like a lot to me, but
I think we had like 700 or 800.
Yeah, you guys were bigger than us for sure. I remember when we would do football games with you guys would show up to the football games in like overalls and like the most insinuating that we were hillbillies, because our school was like in a peninsula of cornfields. And I was like, that's hilarious. Well, now
I'm going to trump you with that one, but people would bring plungers to our games because Jacob's their colors are brown and gold.
Oh my gosh.
So it's shit and piss.
Oh my God.
And they, to this day, have not changed the colors. Everybody begs them to go to black and yellow, black and gold.
Yeah.
And they will not. Like, who has colors brown and gold?
You want to know who?
Jacobs.
The San Diego Padres. And I always say that, and I'm like, oh my God, it's the worst uniforms of all time. Yeah. Yeah. They're supposed to be like, based off of like the monks, like, you know how the monks wear like brown cloaks. Yeah. Anyways, those are bad colors, and
Horrible.
they should change them. So Jacobs, if you're watching, there you go.
They've been trying to forever, but
I think you described yourself, and you're very charismatic. You're very social. You like to be around people all the time. Do you find it hard to be by yourself?
yes.
In what way?
I feel that, like, a lot of FOMO.
Okay.
Like, fear of missing out on something. Or maybe because I'm an only child. Mm-hmm. I just know I get anxious being alone.
Do you think that that has any indication into anything that has to do with relationships and things like that moving forward? Was it like, I don't want to be by myself in life because I don't want to be by myself ever, really?
You know, I went to, actually, now that I think about it, I went to prom by myself.
So you went to prom by yourself, but you can't go to a movie.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
But I didn't want to miss out. So I'm like, I'm going to go to prom by myself. And I remember there's a picture that I post sometimes about, you know, being an individual no matter what the stakes are. And it's like everybody has their couple, and I'm like by myself. Yeah. But I'm in the group, but I'm by myself. In high school, I mean, I had one long-ish relationship, and I lost my virginity when I was a freshman to him, and he's now my best friend, even to this very moment. He would do anything for me, and after that, I was pretty single for quite some time, and even now, I am okay with being alone. With a relationship.
With a relationship.
Yes.
I was going to say, with a relationship. Yes. Okay. That makes sense. What do you do in your free time, you know, with or without friends, that isn't work related? So hobbies, like what brings you joy?
I want to say everything work related. I am a workaholic. Yeah. And if I'm not editing, I'm doing creative shoots, or I'm doing self-portraits, or designing things online. Everything kind of revolves around work. If I'm not working, I'm either like going to a concert, music, traveling, you know, anything outside, anything warm. I hate the cold. I hate Illinois. I'm stuck. But I hate Illinois. And again, you know, I do like to listen to podcasts. I don't read. I wish I did. I'll listen to audiobooks because I just don't have time.
Well, you can do it simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
I think that you're really one of the lucky people who embody this whole, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's great because there's so many people, myself included, right, that are searching for what that thing is.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that you have found that, and you've been doing it, do you say 15 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's...
And I never took art.
Amazing.
Like, nothing artistic.
It's all self-taught, just...
Yeah.
That's fantastic. You're so lucky in that respect. It's like... I mean, I guess, okay, so that being said, your career journey has spanned over 15 years. Did you ever work for somebody and that's how you got into photography? Or what got you into knowing that, okay, I need to get behind the camera. This is my thing?
So I never had a 9 to 5.
Okay.
Which will play into my personality. I don't like someone telling me what to do. I don't like authority. I don't like rules. And again, it will totally play into who I am. But I was a bartender. I was in the hospitality industry, event planning. I did banquets, things like that. And for the most part, I was definitely just bartending for at least 6-7 years.
That's a good job for somebody who doesn't like to be alone, and you know there's always something going on. Also, very good money.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, when did you get your first camera?
I was living in Elgin. I had moved out of my parents' house at that point, and I was going to a community college, ECC.
Yeah.
And I took out a loan, which was stupid. It was like a $10,000 loan and for school, and I ended up just buying shit for myself.
Oh, girl, I could write a book on all the stuff I bought with excess money from FAFSA.
I bought a
Do not
Doberman
recommend.
Pinscher. I bought a...
Oh, you got a dog?
Yeah, I got a dog.
See, I wasn't even mentally there. I should have got dogs, though.
I just spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just played with Photoshop a lot. And eventually, once I had a child, obviously he's the center of my attention.
Yeah.
Taking pictures, editing. And so that kind of evolved very, very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up being something incredibly remarkable. Like it's taken me to see so many places, meet so many people, and experience so much in life that it's wild. And
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
Again, I'm one of the people where I'm always like, what do I want to be when I grow up? At 33, still don't know. I'm like, I'm throwing around ideas. Like, should I just, do I have to go back to school and be a therapist? Like, I have no idea. So I'm envious of you, and I'm just so happy for you in that respect. That being said, do you want to, I guess, talk a little bit about your studio now and, plug your website? How do people get in touch with you if they're interested in seeing your portfolio?
So I was at the Dole Mansion, like I mentioned, for about 10 years, and there was a lot of politics involved, and it's essentially, and this is just my opinion, but it's a nonprofit organization, and the head or board of directors is a billionaire. He has always had money. And naturally, a lot of people don't understand what I do for a living, and they don't appreciate it.
They're probably like, she's doing porn up there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of other politics that go in it, but essentially, I got the heads up that he was looking to kick me out, and he wanted to get rid of the nonprofit as far as it being an arts park, but he wants it more to be a business, offices, but not the musicians that we had in there, artists, painters, photographers, things like that. So he's trying to change the mission statement, essentially. So I had zero option. Again, I had the biggest studio there. I was there for the longest, and he literally was, you got to go. So
I think a lot of people are transitioning from that kind of creative space to almost a small business startup incubator. I know Huntley's opening up one.
Yeah.
I think we're experiencing one right now using this kind of space, but also this is creative, right? So that's unfortunate, but it led you to where you're at now, which I've been to both now, right? And while the Dole Mansion is amazing and historic, I think that you have so much more freedom, and it's yours, solely yours, where you're at now.
Yeah, well, I did have a studio at the Dole Mansion, so I essentially could have done similar things, but it's just why when you have a 200-year-old building that you can shoot in,
Totally,
which is historical. So I had to leave, and my good friend, she had a warehouse studio, and it was almost like a studio share kind of thing, and so she pretty much let me move in. And there was, when you share spaces with other people, there's a lot of drama that can happen. And I do want to say a lot of it was my fault. And looking at it in hindsight, I would have done a lot of things differently. But I am a maximalist, and I'm all over the place. And my studio mates were minimalists, and they were very, the personality. And I love her dearly, and she knows that. All of this too. But I definitely could have done things way differently, and it caused a huge stressor with the economy crashing.
Yeah.
She couldn't uphold the studio. I couldn't uphold the studio by myself. So we ended up not re-signing the lease. And so I got another studio in Woodstock, which I love. So that's where I'm at now.
Woodstock has, for the people who don't live in Illinois, McHenry County, has one of the coolest historical downtown squares, and it actually is where Groundhog Day was shot.
Yep.
So if you've ever seen that movie, like where it replays over and over again, Ashley's like right on that square, and it's so cool. So it's not like she just has this cool internal space, which she does, but she also has kind of like this whole space where she can go out and be creative.
Yeah.
And so that's just so amazing. So if somebody wants to take a look at your work, like how do they do that? So
I'm pretty shadow banned on Instagram, so you have to physically type in every single letter of my business name.
Okay.
And it's Ashley_Clem, KLEMM as in Mary, _boudoirs.
And I will link it in the bio of this as well, because we tested it out. You literally have to type every single piece out before it would pre-populate, which is crazy. And your website?
It's just ashleyclem.com.
Okay.
So it's anything that I decide to do, whether it's retreats or workshops, education, photography, you can find it there. Podcast.
Amazing.
All the things. ashleyclem.com. Obviously, I'm on Facebook as well. And I have a private group that is still standing, thank God.
It's a massive group. There's so many people in there. Yeah.
It's 14,000-ish. And most of them are local. So that's pretty cool. And, right now, as we're talking in real time, Facebook is cracking down on censored material. So I don't know how much longer I will be there, but I'm still pushing through. And
amazing. And I think don't we have a discount code for listeners of the podcast? I don't remember. Gosh. What was it? Was it TDD?
Yeah.
100?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you go to your website, ashleyclem.com, and you do a book now situation, there's
and you just mentioned.
Yeah, you mentioned the Dichotomy Diaries, TDD 100. It's $100 off
a session.
Yeah,
so
it's a good deal.
Yeah, my full shoots, you get hair and makeup. I have a wonderful team of women that pretty much cater to you. So when you book a shoot, you have your own manager, so your own assistant, and your hair and makeup team, and me. So you definitely get what you pay for.
Client closet, too, which is, you've never seen more lingerie and cute fucking stuff than Ashley has in her studio. It's amazing.
And I have sizes small to 4XL.
Yep.
Different items for you to choose from. So I try to be as inclusive as I can. So there's at least 2,000 pieces in my client closet.
Oh, I know. I've seen it. You know how bad I want to catalog all that stuff. Okay. What are some of your biggest fears? And this is a big question. You're like, how can I answer that? But like, what has been a consistent fear in your life from early to like now, or do you not have any?
I'm scared of death for sure.
Okay.
I am scared of right now failing because I have so many people that depend on me.
Okay.
And we'll get into it. I have zero help whatsoever. And it's to the point now, I have 3 humans that depend on me, but now actually 4 because now I've transitioned into, taking care of the household and my mother. It's like full circle. We're the Polish family. My grandmother lived with me my whole life. She has since passed, and now, my mother will live with me probably until, she passes.
And you know what? I didn't even mention this, right? But that was another similarity that we shared, was you living under the same roof with 3 generations of European women, right? I have that same experience where we have the mother-in-law suite in the basement where my granny lives, and then we have my mom, and then we have me. And while it from the outside, I think people would always look at it and be like, that's so nice to have like your family so close. It can be, rarely, but for the most part, it's a scenario where I don't know if toxic is the right word. I feel like maybe for me, but your family knows so much about everything that you do and vice versa.
Yeah.
To where there's I always say there's a difference between secrecy and privacy, but you have no privacy sometimes in those when you live like us.
I think it's a good thing.
Okay.
Is it always ideal? No. Like, I definitely, I'm in the dating pool now, and I don't like to say, my mom lives with me or I live with my mother. But at the same time, if you think about it, that's how families should be. We should be taking care of each other, and it takes a village. And unless there's some danger or toxicity, which in my situation there is not, I'm going to use that loosely now because my mother is very different now than she was growing up. But I do feel like it's very good to have your family with you. Yeah.
I agree with that because I am a true advocate of like families staying together and taking care of the elders in your family and not shipping them off into homes and things like this, even though I also do very much support, long-term care if that's needed. It goes outside the scope of my ability to care for you.
Yes.
It's difficult to heal in the same environment that broke you is something that I say frequently. And while this is not any kind of, I'm not putting this on my mom or on my granny at all, but living with them for a long time, when I'm back there, I'm reminded of the bad things that I had gone through in their presence.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's difficult for me to escape and move forward and be the generation that like, no, this stops here. We're not going to do this anymore,
Like setting the boundaries and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I find it difficult to do that when you live with people who are not really doing that for themselves or
I feel like now with my mother living under my roof or her roof, because it is her home, but I now have taken over and pay the bills. The trauma that's happening now in real time is that she's not the same person, and she's doing damaging things, which again I'll get into later because it plays in the whole dynamic. But growing up, she was a great single mom, and she did the best that she could. And yes, there's mistakes. I'm making mistakes in real time. I'm going to make mistakes. And, she just did the best that she could. And I will never hate her for that. I will never, put her down at all.
No,
and,
I mean, it's a good role model, right? And again, I said it before, but I'll say it again. You come from a long line of strong women. And that's something that a lot of people don't have when they end up in scenarios like you and I have been in. And also, right, you have children. Your children see how you are. They see how your mom is. And it sets a good example for, right, because you have all boys, right? Yeah. So they're, what are they going to look for in their future partners and things like this? So
that is huge on how I parent. And again, we'll get into it when you get to meet all the characters in my story. But I want my children to be affectionate. I want my children to have the same love language I do.
Yeah.
I don't want to create men who treat women poorly.
That is a profound statement. I think that is where it all starts. And more moms, I think, actually, I take that back. Not more moms should want that, because I believe that most moms would want that. Yeah. But more moms could be more cognizant of how the things that they're doing affect their children. So it's really great to be, emotionally aware and just self-aware enough to, you're like, okay, these are my kids, they're watching me. I don't think a lot of people think like that.
And again, I'm definitely not perfect, 100%. I've made a ton of mistakes, and I'm ready to own up to them. And, you just have to be better than you were the day before.
That's so true. I say that too.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about this when we first opened up this episode, but how long have you wanted to share this story?
Okay. It's been about almost 4 years.
Okay.
And I held off for a very, very long time. And it was very hard for me, again, to decide to do this because, again, I'm living in this and it's not going to go away. The post-separation abuse will never go away. And this is only going to ignite it.
Yeah, it's one thing. I know in this space, a lot of people talk about, well, the way that you can get out of it is to go no contact. You can't.
No.
You can't go no contact because you have shared children and you have to do drop-offs and things like this. So, it begs the question, like, okay, then how does someone who can't go no contact heal from this?
When I decided to do this, it was after several public lash outs on his end that I realized no matter how much I tried to get along and tried to change the mindset, that it was never going to happen. So I might as well just live in this shit and own it and create my boundaries and do whatever the fuck I want to.
Well, this is a really good, you're laying the foundation for your gigantic boundary wall, because
I know
that's how I feel, right? It's like, how strongly I feel about boundaries and making sure that people know that they're there, how to respect them, and what happens if you don't.
Yeah.
And no part of what I do with this podcast is, it's not an intimidation tactic. It's not anything like this. This is what's going to happen because we're doing it and we're pursuing it.
Yeah.
Should you continue the same pattern of not respecting my boundaries, person A, person B, it will be shared. Truthfully.
Yeah,
and again, that might to a person who has historically not respected boundaries seem scary, but again, it fucking should.
Yeah, and then also with narcissists, and I do feel like everybody has some form of narcissism.
Oh, we do.
You know, and I'm not going to, again, say that I am not vain or, I am not narcissistic in some of the things that I do and have done. But what narcissists don't want is for them to be outed or someone to share who they really are. And I have tried to get along so many times, and I just know that, again, it will never happen. So the problem with sharing this is that I have kids. And again, they love their father 100% as they should. At the same time, there's a lot of things going on that is not okay. And I'm not going to hide it. So
I think
I'm just torn,
Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so. Again, I can only sympathize, not empathize. But if you view this in a way of like, hey, I'm putting this out here, and this is we've talked about this many times. I'm putting this out here to protect and help others because your situation is in the past. You're currently, still in part of it, but you're developing the boundaries within the current timeline to be able to navigate. You're learning the tools to be able to navigate so that it doesn't affect you the way that it has in the past.
Yeah.
Which is more than you could say for a past version of you, right? Going through it. That's growth. Amazing. So sharing the story is helping other people that will listen, feeling seen, validated, but it's also kind of like a little time capsule. So, your boys one day will listen and they'll be like, damn, my mom was so strong. Oh, I didn't know this. This is how she navigated in a non-disparaging way, just telling them because they could hear it from your mouth later, or they can hear it this way. And I think it's just, I think it's a classy way to kind of, to tell like your story to your children. And I say this like with Dick and with his daughter who will eventually listen and know who her father is. Again, in no way, shape, or form vindictive, but more informative.
Yeah, I'm really trying to separate the and hate's a very strong word, but the resentment that I have, anger, and also, it's developed into hatred because I just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
So I'm going to really try very, very hard to not be vindictive in this process and own my truths and my mistakes, as well as owning what has been done to me.
Oh, I got you on that. If you get vindictive, I'll tell you. I promise. No, I feel like there's parts where in my story in season 1, I was like, I would hear myself get really angry in my tone, and I'd be like, fuck him, And then I'm like, okay, let's get back to, Amanda.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll let you know. And that actually kind of leads me into really, like, my last question. How has the experiences that we're going to shortly talk about, how has that shaped your view of the world is too big, but love, relationships? Do you feel jaded? Do you feel like everyone's bad? Like how do you feel about?
I think that most relationships shouldn't be happening right now. I feel that we are just stuck in the relationship that we decided to be stuck in. And there's so much abuse that happens behind closed doors that nobody talks about. But in most of my clients, this is so horrible that women get stuck financially or with the children, and they have no way out.
Listen to this. Sorry to interrupt you, but I saw this for a reason today. Now I know. I saw something on Instagram that said it's devastating that we live in a world where some parents are only alive because their children are. And I was like, like, we're to the point where some parents are to the point where they're like, no, I got to do it for my kids. I got to do it for my kids. They're just chugging along as a hollow human being because of the experiences, but solely for the kids. And I was like, wow, that's profound.
The one thing that many women can relate to is that when a woman, she'll go and do so many things to make something work, but the moment she crosses that one line of no return, she's done.
Yeah.
Like 100%. And you went through so much stuff in your podcast, and there was just a point where it was just like, it's done. So no matter how many begs or, I know women will go back and forth, and it takes, they say on average 7 times before they actually leave. But
if ever, some of them never do. Yeah.
And, once they're done, they're done. They're emotionally, physically checked out. And, I got to that point, and it took me at least 3 years from the moment I decided that I was leaving to leave. And actually in both very long relationships that I'll talk about, I was strong enough to where I knew that I was going to leave. Women plan ahead because they have children, and they have to put their own world and feelings and emotions aside, and you're just living in hell.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I, again, can only sympathize and not empathize, because even when Dick left in June, right after you had met him, I didn't want to leave, and he had left me 9 times. That's why I say if they do. I am so thankful, and I could say this now, but I'm so fucking thankful that he left and stayed gone.
Yeah, because you would have...
How much longer would I have continued that? I don't know. I was a shell of a human being, if I would have had children, would have been different. I don't know. But all I know is...
self-worth at all.
Zero self-worth.
And I'm listening to your podcast, I'm like, Amanda...
I know. Everyone always says that. They're like, I just want to fucking strangle you through the speaker. And I'm like, no, I know. I hope that you feel that way. And I hope you feel all of the things, because I was absent of feelings. I was I don't know. There wasn't, my lifeline was him, and then it was always being taken away. So I would be flatlining. Like, I'd be like, oh, well, we're dead now again.
Yeah.
So
almost like there's nothing behind the eyes. You're just staring.
yeah.
But to circle back around to your question with relationships, I am very strong right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't tolerate anything. I mean, I've been single-ish for 4 years almost, and my ex-fiance, I mean, he's been in 4 or 5 relationships now, you know, and I'm okay with waiting for somebody who will treat me the way I should be treated, and vice versa.
Right.
Again, I'm no angel here, but I am very self-aware now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm almost 40, and I don't want to get stuck in another loveless relationship. You know, when we get to know the men in my life, both of them are polar opposites.
Yeah.
So I have my boundaries, and I'm not going to bend at all. So I do feel like I know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to find it.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with having, you know, someone on the side that I know I'll never be in a relationship with. And, you know, we'll also get into it. I had my fair share of fun, like right when I got out of the relationship. And this was not a good choice, but everybody does that when they leave. They kind of go, you know, they call it the hoe phase or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I had my fun. It lasted about 6 months, and I've been really open with my sexuality, and I've experienced a ton in the meantime. And I was a little shell of a person when I was in those with my fiance. I was dead inside, and I'm not anymore.
You're not insulting them. You're describing them. You're not speaking negatively about them. You're just explaining what happened. And you're not ruining their reputation. They did that with their actions. Let that sink in. Ashley's story is one that so many of us will see pieces of ourselves in. Some parts you might expect, but others, they'll hit you out of nowhere. And trust me, when you least expect it, you'll be shoulders deep in one of the most relatable, yet traumatizing stories you've heard lately. Episode 1 of Ashley's story drops very, very soon. So don't miss it. Subscribe to our Patreon. It's free to join to be the first to hear it. And make sure you're following the Dichotomy Diaries on Instagram, YouTube, wherever you podcast, all the places. Set your alerts because this season, it's coming, truthfully, when you least expect it. And while you're waiting, go check out Ashley's incredible work. She's ridiculously talented at boudoir photography. She captures raw, powerful beauty in a way that only she can. You can find her work at www.ashleyclem.com and give her a follow on her socials. They'll be linked below. I'm your host, Amanda Arnier, and this is the Dichotomy Diaries, Season 2. We'll see you soon.